www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey.
Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast.
Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesday. My name is Michael, also known as Oilers Live. Got my trusty sidekick Dash in the park and special guest Tom Gazzola joining us tonight for a live show on edmontonsportstalk.com. It'd be a great hat if it wasn't mirrored right now. Quick special thanks to Dustin Nielsen, Matt Iwanek, and our guest Tom Gazzola and Lieutenant Eric for this opportunity to have our part in the Edmonton sports scene. Heavy Hockey Live at night is on Tuesdays with Oilers Live, which is Dash and myself, and Devin, Bruce, Tyler, and John tomorrow. Thanks for fixing that night at 9 p.m. Mountain for the Fantasy Hockey Hacks. A couple of housekeeping items for those of you new listeners tonight. There's a live chat occurs on the YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Give us a subscribe while you're there. And all of this is brought to you by the Heavy Hockey Network, which can be found at heavyhockey.com. All right, let's make it count tonight. Welcome to the show, Tom. Love the hat.
Thank you. Hey, this thing is fresh. I'm in a mad scramble right now. We just finished up the Oilers Media Golf Tournament.
Nice.
I just got back from the course. Dusty and I were sporting these fresh lids that just came in from Hive Media. I'm looking. I got my mic, I got my headset, and I don't know where my splitter is. So I was like, if you saw me 2 minutes ago, guys, I was a mess. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to have to run this off of my computer mic. And I apologize. I hope the sound's okay. But it's been a day, boys. Thanks for having me.
No, sounds great. How was the golf game?
Good. We won the tournament.
Yeah.
We won.
How many mulligans did you buy?
Yeah.
None. There were no mullies. Like,
Wow.
the Oilers with their media golf game, like, they're pretty stringent. There's some good players out there. So it was myself, Dustin Schwartz, who is one of Oilers fans' favorite coaches, as I know, but honestly, a great guy.
Yeah.
Awesome golfer.
I love
and,
Schwartzy.
A pure athlete. And Kate Doyle, who does Oilers team services. She's great. And Kevin Rapinoe, who does corporate communications. And I wish I could say I did a lot of heavy lifting, but I was coasting and letting everybody else do all the work. And you know what? We came away victorious as a team, and we celebrate as a team.
Were you the guy that just got to swing hard once there was a safe one in play, and then the first one up to putt so everybody else could see your line?
Pretty much. And I was the glue guy too, just pumping everyone up,
buddy.
saying, you got this. Like, that's the value I bring to the team. Outside of that, I'm just there for a good time. So
You're singing to the choir. That's my job in every Texas scramble, buddy.
yeah, you need a glue guy, and I'm that glue guy. I've come to realize this.
Yeah,
Hey,
I got a
Dash
company
makes my
credit card.
best shot every night on this program.
Well, yeah, thanks for starting off the show by chirping Tom. Hey, welcome to the show, Tom. It's your first time. Pleasure to have you. We're really honored to have you. No, hey, can you straighten out your screen? Welcome
There's
to
a standard,
high expectations and the
standard of
standards of
excellence.
Oilers Live here.
A standard of excellence.
I didn't even know I could mirror my screen. I had no clue. I figured it out quickly. So that's a minor miracle, guys.
That's a
This is
pro
what
right
it
there.
looks like to look at you. I mean, I thought your eyes were backwards for a bit there.
They might be.
I
They
thought
might
your
be.
mustache was backwards.
That's right. Wait a second. I thought his hair was parted the other way. What's going on here? Who is this guy? How did Dusty do?
I'll say I didn't really get into his game and how his team performed. I think he was with Tony Brar and who else? I can't remember who else was in his group, but I think they just came in at 1 under. And for Dusty, that's pretty good. I think Tony's supposed to be a good golfer, but you know what? It's a team game, especially when we did a shamble. I've never done a shamble before, so it wasn't a full scramble. And, they put in a good effort. And unfortunately, we were better than they were. So, or fortunately for us, unfortunate for them. And it's just the way it goes sometimes.
I've
Awesome.
been out there with Dusty. Usually, yeah, -1 on the scorecard in a scramble, but about -8 on the double rum and cokes.
He was taking care of business when it came to the double Ryan Cokes. Yeah.
Right on. Right on. Well, appreciate you joining us tonight. This is our second time on EdmontonSportsTalk.com live. Of course, you're on there every day, every morning now, it would seem.
Putting in long days when Dusty's not around.
Yeah.
Those days, like
Buddy, I felt for you the other day.
Yeah, it's a haul, but I mean, the kid can talk for 12 hours if you need him to. So it was interesting. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And thankfully, not that many early morning wake ups. Hopefully less than when I was at 1260 with him. But every now and then, you can, swap in for him and hopefully keep the show afloat. Eric does all the heavy lifting. Like I said, glue guy. Same thing when it comes to radio and TV. Just the glue guy, you guys.
That's right.
I had to move to Atlantic Canada to get up for the 6 a.m. show. I mean, it's like 6 a.m. Who does that?
Well, Tommy might be famous for coming in late with a hot coffee 5 minutes after the hour. There's a reputation being earned here. I don't know.
Joe Buck says on YouTube he wants to know where he can buy those hats, Tom.
Great question.
I think they will be made available for people to buy. This is literally the first run. So before Dusty and I left the station to go to the media tournament, Chelsea Holt, Eric's sister-in-law and Lucas's wife, came in and she's like, boys, these are the first set of hats. And we all grabbed one and away we went to the tournament. So this is like fresh. And I think the plan is to get a store up and running and people, if they want in on some EST gear, the plan is for that to happen. So I thought this was a great opportunity to display it for the first time for those watching and for those listening that can't necessarily see it. They're sweet, they're straightforward, they're nice snapback, and they fit really good and they look good, and so the colors pop and people I think will be able to buy them soon.
So that's an Oilerslive exclusive, I guess, right there. We're breaking the hats here.
Yes, you are.
Late breaking news here. This is good. That's what, our fourth one this year, I think.
Exclusive. This one's on the
fourth
exclusive.
There we go.
Oh man. Well, lots to talk about and nothing to talk about all at the same time. We're kind of in a in a bit of a lull, maybe.
Welcome
a bit, but Oilers rookie camp obviously just concluded. Maybe one of the more lackluster rookie camps, right, of recent history. Which is that a bad thing? I mean,
No.
not to say anything about the process. These guys are still good players, but I mean, we're not hoping on any of these guys to come in and make a splash, right?
No. And if you are, I think, you need to take a step back and be a little bit more realistic. I know people get excited about prospects. We talk about them all the time. You guys talk about them all the time, and rightly so, because at some point, some of these guys are going to have to pop and make the team and actually be legit NHLers. But it's actually kind of nice to not talk about the Young Stars Classic and put some of these guys on the roster from the Young Stars Classic on the opening day roster, because for years and years and years, and I know, we all talk about it, but like we would go to Penticton and be like, all right, well, let's see how Nuge and Taylor play and Everly and PRV. And okay, they had a great Young Stars tournament. How does that look at preseason? Well, they're okay. Not as good as Young Stars. Then they get into the regular season. How are they? Well, they're playing a lot of minutes. Probably shouldn't be playing as many minutes as they were, and the team sucks. That's gone. Those days are gone. And it's kind of weird. It feels counterintuitive because we're so stuck in that mindset, right? Like, well, which one of these guys are going to make it this year? Who's got a legit shot?
Yeah.
This year, seriously, none of them. And that's just fine. That's
perfect.
Just fine. And, in a year or two, the Bourgaults, the Petrovs, the Tulios, they shouldn't be playing in this Young Stars Classic because they should be AHL guys who have already made their debuts in the NHL, whether it's for a quick cup of coffee or they get called up because they're playing so well. That's what a good organization does, in the NHL, and that's how they turn players over and get them ready. Whereas, in years past, we were watching a crappy Oilers team rush players who weren't even ready, and all it led to was more misery.
Often there's a reverse linear effect there. I think the better you're doing in the NHL, the worse your team's doing in the young stars.
Yeah, that's just fine. Because guess what, boys? Those games over the weekend mean diddly squat.
Yeah.
Anybody that you heard out of the young stars that played well, showed well, that might have a quicker route to the NHL than the others?
Yeah. The guy that's, kind of tantalizing and gets the juices flowing every time you talk to people from the organization is Matvei Petrov. And watching him in the Calgary game specifically, I thought that was probably his strongest game. Yesterday's game, we've got getaway day in baseball. That Monday game in the Young Stars, those guys, they just want to be done with it and move on to training camp. And that's very much the feel. And, not a lot of people will tell you that, but that is how they feel about it. So I thought that Calgary game was a good example. You got a bit of a little taste of the rivalry too. It's a Saturday night, Edmonton, Calgary. Yes, the rookies, but I like Petrov. I thought the goal he scored was beautiful. The way him and Bourgault were snapping around the puck. Savoy as well. You had Bo Akey in there a little bit. So kind of the guys that you were looking to actually show and be the leaders on the team were. And it was interesting too. Like Bourgault, I thought made some nice plays in that first game, taking pucks to the net. And then, teaming up with Petrov here and there a little bit, and Savoy, like I mentioned. Tullio was in the mix a little bit too. But there's some people texting us actually at Edmonton Sports Talk saying they didn't really like Bourgault's game. And I understand that. Maybe he didn't put up the points or get the results or dominate like some expected, but you can't really put a ton of stock into these games. I think when he gets into his first couple of preseason games, if he's a ghost out there, then I'm going, well, what's going on with Bourgault? But
I think, and I mentioned this, I don't know. I've been on a couple podcasts lately, but in reference to Bourgault, I mean, this is a guy who probably played a year longer in junior than he should have. I got a chance to watch him out here playing the Q, and he looked a little bit, bored, if you will. Like he could have taken it away. I just think now that he's at this level, he needs to have a little bit more killer instinct and take it away, right? Like be the guy that is absolutely noticeable out there rather than the guy that's bored to be out there because he knows he's better than everybody else. I don't know. That's the only. He's still played. I watched 2.5 of the games, and I thought he was still good. I just didn't think he was Bourgault good because I know this guy's got a ton of talent.
To me, I just saw it. Sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
No, I was just gonna say he was amazing at the Mem Cup.
Yeah,
and that he should have been, and he was. So it's there.
Yeah,
go ahead, Dash.
Yeah, from what I just saw in the Youngsters games, and some of it was bits and pieces, and some of it was highlights, but for me, I thought he was still going to the right places on the ice. Like I thought, he was still going and trying to battle. He just didn't come out with the puck very often. He'd go in with one-on-ones and he'd be where he's supposed to be, but the puck would go the other way. I heard you say it on your podcast on the All Stream, Tommy, and it's a bit of a dog's breakfast on who you're playing with, right? You might be with a 18-year-old, you might be with a 22-year-old, you might be with a guy that's at college, you might be with a guy that's, played in the AJHL. It's really hard to find chemistry in those moments. And I think like the positive to take away from it, if Bourgault didn't show great, is perhaps that he looked fantastic on that power play. Like you said it in that Calgary game, like that goal that Petrov scored to tie it up 3-3, like that was maybe Petrov's best period of the tournament.
Yep.
I guess, what's your comments on that? I think like, there's something to be said about finding chemistry in a tournament like that. And like you said, if Bourgault already had, or like Michael said, if Bourgault already has the reputation for maybe self-load managing, if you want to call it that, the last game of the tournament versus Vancouver is exactly when you do it, isn't it?
Yeah. The Young Stars Classic, it's fun. It gives the scouting staffs and management teams like a little precursor going into main training camp. But you talk to the players and you ask them, what's this play like? Like, how would you describe it? And they go, it's a scramble. It's hard to get into a rhythm. And by the time you get to the third game, if you played the first two and are in the third game, some of these guys only play two. Yeah. That's when you start to figure it out. You find a groove, and so too do the other teams. But it's the last game. Like there's no set level of expect. It's not the AHL. It's not Major Junior. It's not these. It's somewhere in, but it finds itself in like this weird middle ground between like three different leagues, and you don't know what to expect. You're just throwing these guys together, and it's like, okay, guys, go play, but you're all wearing Oilers jerseys, and you're playing a bunch of the same guys who are just coming together right now, and they're all wearing Flames jerseys. So there's no practices. Like you get the pregame skate, and they skate once or twice before they fly out to Penticton, but it's not like a training camp where you're working on systems and you're actually doing them on the ice. Then you're going over video, and then you've got a couple of days before the first game. So they just call it every time. Every year I covered it, they're like, this tournament's a scramble. You can't really get a true feel for it. And, some guys excel in that environment, and you'll see guys that score goals and put up decent points in the 2 or 3 games that they play that you've never heard of, that are there on an ATO or whatever. And then you're like, well, where the hell was the first rounder? He didn't do anything. Like, I'll use this as an example. Bo Akey yesterday, I know people were looking at his penalties, but what was he doing in the offensive zone? He was running around. I don't know if Colin Chalk gave him the green light or what, but I'm like, did he just take an offensive zone penalty? What's he doing? Like, so I think that kind of maybe is a small example of the type of hockey it is, but some guys are able to show a little bit of skill, and they have those individual flashes, and that's great. And I think those are the little things you can jot notes on, but it overall, the best way to describe this tournament from my experiences, boys, is a scramble.
Yeah. And I mean, I've watched how many games over the years, just exactly what you said. You could go to a junior game and the hockey's better, right? Yeah. These guys are, camp invites. So you would expect maybe if they were working on systems, the quality would be better over time, but not in something like this. It's just, there's players, across the league that I've watched in junior, and they're just getting lit up in these young stars tournaments or whatever they're called, wherever. And then, look, Chicago's all wild over Bedard, scoring 3 on, like in these, and who didn't expect him to score 3 right in his first game. And Fantilli's lighting it up. Even Jordan Dumais, who I've got a soft spot for in my heart because he's a Halifax Moosehead, he got 6 points, I think, his first game, and he's not going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate if he, if he makes the team, right? Of course, who knows? Now they've got a new coach. We'll get into that.
Yeah, games like that, you're finally getting chemistry with your line mates by the time you throw your bag over the shoulder and you're heading to the bus. Like you just want to get to the airport and get home and get on with it. And I think for guys like Bourgault, like they're just looking forward to, the exhibition season now and getting out and playing with real NHLers and getting a little bit of a taste of some top 6 and games like that. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's always the Perlini or Ty Ratty award winner for every preseason. So I don't know what we'll see there. But
well, and Dash, like, I'll just add one other thing about that. While you're describing that, I thought of, well, what if you see Bourgault in a preseason game with a couple of guys that he played with all season long last year on the Condors? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they're snapping it around. They've got their set plays and they try little things. And you're like, oh, there it is. Well, why didn't he do that last weekend? Guess what? Because he's just out there trying to figure out what the hell's going on because it's a different style of game.
Yeah, because he just met Grube.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think as far as high-end potential offensive ceiling goes between Petrov and Bourgault? Who do you think will really come out on top as the real offensive magician out of those two? I mean, they're different players, but
good question. At one point when I was watching those guys work it around, I'm like, this is the next wave of skill guys that at some point are going to have to replace Hyman, Connor Brown, Nugent Hopkins. Like these guys are going to have to, if this team wants to have a prolonged window outside of these next few years that I know is very much in the spotlight, deservedly so, then I think one or both are going to have to step up. I like you want to give the first rounder the benefit of the doubt, but you watch Petrov and you're like, this guy's got a lot of the tools that you want. He moves well. He's big. He's confident. Everything is silky smooth. Like, it should be Borgo.
Right.
But the more I watch Petrov and what he brings to the table, now I want to watch him in his defensive zone. I want to watch him against guys that are 25 and have played in the league for 4 years, and how he battles on the wall and things like that. Those are elements that need to be seen. But, there's a reason why that the Oilers get excited and they start to salivate when they talk about Petrov, but not taking anything away from Borgo. He's going to get his crack at it too. I would say I would put Borgo slightly above Petrov right now, but I'm so close to just saying, like, Matvei Petrov figures out the AHL first. Let's start there. If he figures that out really quickly and he advances quick, I think he might have an inside track to get in crack at the Oilers lineup. And then there, if he figures out how to play with either McDavid, Draisaitl, Ryan McLeod, whoever, if he just shows responsible play defensively and then that offensive ability does come out, I could see him passing Borgo and becoming a top 6 guy. And who knows, maybe Borgo finds a way to get there too, or maybe Borgo takes off this year in his second year in the AHL. But there's something about Petrov that you look at and you're like, geez, there's a lot of raw talent there. And he seems to be going down the right path. And it's hard to you got Borgo right here and you're like, here's the first rounder from a couple of years ago, should be on his way to putting together an NHL career. But then you see this other guy and you're like, that looks really good too. And so I'm intrigued and tantalized by the ability Petrov shows, but we'll see what Borgo can do. And guess what? If both of those guys can find a way, then you're making the Oilers brass look like geniuses.
Yeah. Well, I always thought with Petrov, I mean, one of the things was, not playing for the Russian team, right, in the World Juniors. I think had he played there, he probably would have been, higher than 6th round pick. Like there was talent there, but, going to coming to Canada and playing in the CHL didn't do him any favors for getting on the team. Right.
Yep.
It was that weird draft where you didn't really get to see a lot of players play either. There was so many junior seasons canceled everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. We're seeing the ripple effect of that. The COVID years, it stunted guys. It held guys back. Late bloomers didn't get an opportunity. Like, I don't know what the next 3 or 4 years of the last couple of drafts with these guys will actually be like. It's you're handicapped trying to figure out what they were a few years ago. Now what are they? I don't know.
You know what somebody else said to me that intrigued me? How much better would Connor Bedard be if he got to play full seasons?
Right?
Like,
it was messed up. It was a messed up time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So anybody at the, like Max Wanner, obviously last year, lots was made about Max. Have you heard anything like the view on him going into this year? And what was the deal? Like, he got suspended for a couple of games, right? Like when he got back, was it like token up or something like that? Or
no, it wasn't that. Without going into too much detail,
breaking.
It was off-ice infractions that broke CHL policy, and we'll leave it at that. And he was good to go for the playoffs.
But it's not an ongoing problem. Like, this is
no. I think if off of public record, and you and I were sitting around having a beer and discussing what he did, we'd be like, one guy having fun, okay, and no one would bat an eyelash at it.
Well, I'm perfect. I've never done anything bad.
Oh my Lord.
I've never done anything. I've never done anything.
None of us have done anything.
That's right.
All those stories you told me, Michael.
Yeah.
Must have been lying.
That's good. And did you hear anything about, I mean, this is now his second year at rookie camp, and then I assume he'll be at camp.
I liked his grit.
With Wanner?
Yeah. Like, he plays with that little bit of truculence that we need.
Yeah. Just hearing from Ken Holland today at the media golf tournament, he liked what he saw from him. So that's a good sign. He brought him up without prompt. And I think usually that's probably a good indicator that they like the path that this player is going down. So keep an eye on him, because the Oilers blue line and the prospects, like the shelves are kind of bare. So, you want one of these guys to surprise you at some point, and he's kind of one of the front runners in that regard.
Yeah. What about goaltending? I mean, we've got obviously Rodrigue had a better year last year. It just, outside of Rodrigue, I mean, it doesn't feel like there's a lot again in the cupboards. Anything out of that maybe I didn't get a chance to listen to Holland if it was published anywhere, but did he mention anything around goaltending?
No, that's been quiet. And outside of the three guys that they have at the top, and then, Rodrigue is kind of the work in progress. I know they had Day, he was down at the Young Stars Classic. But that's, if anything, a few years down the road. Crapshoot. I mean, things can change with these guys so quickly. If a coaching regime changes, they don't like the guy that's in the system, he's gone. So, I mean, even if you're looking 3 years down the road, I wouldn't put too much stock into it at this point. But outside of Rodrigue, who they've groomed and worked on and helped, build up into a legitimate pro goalie, it's just all of those other guys are a work in progress.
Shoots to the value of Picard, though, too, or Pickard, right? Like, I mean,
Pickard,
having that.
I've never seen, I'll say this, guys, I saw it in training camp last year and after preseason games. I really haven't seen goalies hug it out like those three did after games. There was a couple, I didn't have to do post game for a couple of preseason games. So I was in the room working, getting interviews, doing the usual stuff. And I remember, I think it was Stu started one of the games and he had an all right night, and Calvin Pickard was backing him up, and he went and he hugged it out with him. And I was like, that was very nice. I don't remember Talbs and LB ever doing that. I don't remember Devin Dubnyk doing that with Nikolai Habibulin or Richard Bachman, like just hugging it out. And it was sincere. It wasn't a show of anything. So he's kind of the third wheel. And in our Oil Stream rankings of importance, I actually mentioned Calvin Pickard as honorable mention, because if a guy goes down, then I don't think there's any hesitation to bring him up, because he has been a starter briefly at times in the NHL. I think he was on one of those god-awful Colorado teams for a bit. So he's been around, and he's reliable enough that you could throw him in for a couple of games. And you know what, if a guy goes down big time, you kind of have that safety net, if you will, for a few games to give the other guy rest.
Long are the days of Billy Smith and Hextall. Hey, I think we got 2 or maybe 3 of the nicest guys in the entire world. Wasn't Campbell's other nickname Ned? Because he's so nice, like Ned Flanders or something.
Yes. Well, I'll tell really quickly. I'll give you so you're in the room, you're talking to these guys, and you get to know them a little bit. And I'm so used to just especially now that I don't work for the team and I did 5 years at TSN, you're kind of on the other side, and the older guys that you were there with trust you, and you'll have your conversations that you've always had with them, whether it was on the plane or at the hotel, wherever. But the newer guys like Jack Campbell, he's like, "What's going on, Tom? How are you? What did you do over the break?" And you're having these, And Matthias Ekholm's the same way. He's like, "Hey, what was that thing you were talking about the other day in the room?" And, "Oh, that was funny." And you're like, "Oh, you want to have a conversation. I don't have to leave immediately because you're annoyed by me." Yeah. And Jack Campbell's one of those guys. So is Stu Skinner. So that is very much a thing. Cam Talbot was like that. So is Devin Dubnyk. But they do have, I'll call them their sweetheart guys. Like they're just
it's an Oilers goalie thing. We're going to take a break because I leave everybody with the visual of the Oilers goalies hugging it out. When we get back, we'll talk about Connor Brown, some of those predictions and projections for Connor as he joins. This is Oilers Live from the Heavy Hockey Network. Proud to be a friend of Edmonton Sports Talk. We'll be right back. Devin, Bruce, and the rest of the fantasy hockey hacks right here on Edmonton Sports Talk Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Mountain, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey, and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on edmontonsportstalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Make sure you subscribe.
Oilerslive podcast.
Want hockey podcasts? Tough Call Podcast, 99 Forever Podcast, fantasy hockey hacks, and replays of Oilers Live. Available anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Heavy Hockey Network or go to heavyhockey.com. That's right. We need your help. We need your subscriptions. Make sure you subscribe at www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey.
Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast.
Hey, it's Michael back with Oilers Live Tuesday on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. And if you want to join in the chat, head on over to youtube.ca/heavyhockey. We've got as our guest Tom Gazzola tonight, and my co-host and sidekick Dash in the Park is with me. I could get used to these breaks, a little bit of a recharge, get a little, bubbly or coffee, something to keep me going. It's after midnight here in Atlantic Canada. As Reed Wilkins said the next day, I'm like a cyborg on some barge in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
That was
Speaking
great description as I've ever heard of you. He also called you a
the chat.
Come on, that's hilarious.
No way. There we
Wow,
go. Great timing,
his ears were
Reed.
burning. He also called you a zombie super fan, which was pretty funny too.
Man.
That was one
All
of my
right.
favorite
Well,
episodes ever.
I love Reed. So does Tom have a problem with expressing his emotions directly to the person whom he loves?
Yes.
All right. I'll let you have it.
Hey.
So
You and
Of
Reed, you
course.
guys just talk. Michael and I'll stand back here.
We need a moment,
open-ended
fellas.
question.
We need a moment. Reed and I need to hash some things out before we get to the rink tomorrow, evidently.
Right on. Right on. We had Reed on 2 weeks ago now.
3 maybe?
Oh, I love Reed. He's a hell of a guy.
He is.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
hilarious.
I can only
beyond.
imagine. I've not had the opportunity to meet him in person yet, but hopefully when I'm out there for the Heavy Hockey Showdown, we get together and I can buy him a couple beers. Yeah, all good. Let's chat about Connor Brown. I mean, we've got this is probably the most talked about thing maybe in the off season now is what the expectations are for Connor Brown. A lot of depth charts have him going at least starting on the top line with Connor McDavid.
Sure.
How long is that going to last? And if it does, if it lasts all season, which you got to expect Woody to change him up as he always does and do different things. But if he ends up playing most of his time with McDavid, you got to expect a big bump in stats.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I think, first of all, whatever he does, the bar is set so low by the lack of production by Yamamoto and Puljujarvi that, and I think he'll surpass what they did pretty quickly. At least he should if he stays healthy. So I think that's a boon to the team. With him, numbers wise, I don't know what he's going to get for power play time, if any. But 5-on-5, where you want this team to be successful, tilt the ice, create momentum, get power play opportunities, he needs to be like a pest on the puck. He needs to be like Hyman. He needs to dig. He needs to get open if McDavid or Draisaitl are trying to find him backdoor. He's got to bury some of those. So I think like 40 points is adequate. But would I like to see 50? Yep. Do I think that's well within reason? Yep. I think 50 would be quote unquote good. 60 would be excellent. And I think, there might be some out there, knowing Oiler fans, that'd be like 60. This is a top line right wing. You're going to play him with McDavid. McDavid's going to score 155 points minimum, maybe get up to 65, 70 goal. How can your right winger only give you 50 to 60 points? Well, you just watched two right wingers give the Oilers like 30 to 40 points over the last couple of years. And people are like, well, maybe they'll be okay next year. And I think you've got an established guy that should be able to minimum get you that 40, probably get to 50, and then push for 60. And then we keep in mind that this is likely mostly even strength points. So I think when you break it down that way, you go, yeah, all right, that should be adequate. So the other thing too, like how he is defensively, that'll be important. If he's not coughing up pucks on the wall like a couple of those other guys we just mentioned. I'll also throw in Zach Kassian coughed away pucks a lot on the wall, and the turnovers going back the other way. That led to goals. So if Connor Brown can chip in and help with the team defense as a 5-man unit, maybe lessen the burden on the actual defenseman, and the goalies don't have to face that, extra opportunity 5 seconds after making 1 or 2 10-bell saves. That'll also have a small effect, but an important one too. So if he can bring that and just generally elevate the level of play from the forwards by being consistent and reliable and chip in with some offense, to me, that's a bonus. And at $4 million with his bonuses at the end of the year in this day and age in the National Hockey League, I think that's relatively good.
Yeah. Dash, thoughts?
I just, he's a bit of a, it's going to be an interesting experiment. I really do think that. I hope he stays healthy, because it's going to be so important to the lineup. If we can keep him in there for anywhere from 60 to 80 games, I still think he can contribute. If he's going to be up on the top line, and I'm sure that he'll start there, and if he does, that's fine. Whatever, rake your junior chemistry in, and I think that's all fluey anyways. But anyways, they'll have a good enough showing. Great, he sticks there. And then at least you've got that motor on each line. You've got Hyman on the second line with Dry and Nuge and Connor Brown up there. Then you've also got that defensive responsibility all through the lineup. Connor Brown can be defensive, responsibly defensive, as well as Nuge on the second line and McLeod on the third line. You've got speed up and down the lineup that way with Fogle and McLeod on the third line and Brown and Hyman split up. It really brings that all around depth to the top 9. And on those nights where you want to bring it in waves, you can. And then on those other nights where you think you've got that superstar first line that you're up against, then throw Nuge, Brown, and Hyman together or something for a defensive, stalwart of a line, if you will. It's still hard to call him 1, 2, or 3 on any given night. So I just hope he stays healthy so we can see that all come into play. And then I would just add to that is penalty kill. If he gets anywhere close to the amount of penalty kill time with Woody that he did when he was in previous clubs in Ottawa, then I think we're laughing. And that's, I would argue the penalty kill is one of the biggest places we need improvement.
Big time. PK was dog awful for the start of the year. Like how many nights were we going, especially like doing the post-game show, Matt Cassian and I would sit there and be like, how many did they give up tonight? How many games is that in a row? And I'd be sitting, rifling through the game notes and going through the game log. I'm like, well, they've, let in a goal on the power play, 19 of their last 24. And you're just like, oh my God.
It was an improvement over years past, though. So,
Did we do enough to improve again this year?
Much.
That's the big question, is it not? Gagne and Ernie and Sutter aside, like those guys aren't going to get a lot of time in. So, did we do enough? Is Connor Brown enough to improve it?
Desharnais is going to factor into this. I mean, if Broberg doesn't beat him out for a spot, just the pucks, he seems to just eat up pucks and gets in the way, and being 7'9" or whatever the hell he is, like that could be a factor as well. But yeah, and they were off. And I would ask Cass, I would ask Belzy, I'm like, what's going on this PK? Especially when it was struggling in the first few months of the year. And they're like, well, they're always late on, like, the strategy was good, basically. I'll sum it up like the way the boys did. And they went into the X's and O's of it. They talked about crossing Rainbow Road, 30% chance it's likelier to go in if you get the puck through the middle on the power play and all that stuff. But basically, he's like, the system was good. The execution from an Oilers standpoint was like a second or two behind. And they made that one critical error every game that just left that brief moment of opportunity for other teams' power plays. And the power plays are so good. There's so much skill now that they got capitalized against. And the goalies weren't making the saves.
I remember a game against the Jets about halfway through the year where and it was either Jack or somebody kept mentioning just how stretched out the Winnipeg power play was and how long they were and how big they were. And, they had Lowry and these giants out there. And I noticed the transition in our game once we had Bukestad and once Niemelainen started to get minutes in there and Deharnay as well, how, we did start to see those little steps of improvement towards the end of the year. And again, like, do you think that's a testament, Tommy, to like, if you're a split second behind in the NHL, it could literally be the difference between you having 7-foot reach or 5-foot reach?
Yep. And a perfect example of that is, how they would always try to circle from the inside to the outside to force the guys to the wall?
Derek Ryan.
Well, they'd be like a split second behind, and it would leave the pass. I said Rainbow Road. Pardon me, that's Mario Kart talk. Royal Road through the middle. But they would always be late on that loop and the force to the outside that the defenseman could take a step, or the guy that is covering the backside his stick was in the wrong spot, or he was a second behind and would leave it wide open. You got a couple passes through the middle and you've got your goalie going post to post and everybody's scrambling in front of them. And it would lead to goals against. It was that one, just that one half step. And they finally started to figure it out later in the year. But I would watch and I would be like, Cass, why do they keep trying this loop to the outside? Everybody's reading it and they're taking advantage. Cass was just like, it's the right play. Their timing is off and they're getting murdered for it.
I can see it like a good improvement as well as if, now I don't know what your thoughts on the PTOs and who might make it. And, we've all speculated maybe Sam Gagner's around even just to play 30 games, but be around the dressing room and add leadership. I almost feel like Sutter almost potentially has a better chance of making the team. He's more of what we need. He shoots right-handed. He's the size. He's the skill. He's the PK. I know he hasn't played in a while, but Sam's coming off 2 surgically repaired hips.
Yep.
Do you think that those guys can play enough to be able to also contribute in that way?
Sutter, from what I'm told with Sutter, he needs to figure out what he has left in the tank, what kind of hockey player he is right now. Oilers, they're giving him that opportunity. He dealt with long COVID. Obviously, something wasn't right with his body. We've seen Jonathan Taves go through this to the point where he's stepping away this year. And Sutter a few years ago would be the perfect guy.
Yeah.
Not for $4 or $5 million a year, but he was the exact type of centerman that the Oilers could use. So they're throwing him a rope and taking a flyer on him, and we'll see what he is in training camp. But the Sutter we watched a few years ago, 100%. That's the guy that would be perfect. We don't know if he is that. We're going to have to see starting on Thursday when they hit the ice, and then on Sunday if he plays in that first game. And it's truly a test for him. With Sam, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him in the preseason just because of the hip surgeries.
Yeah.
I think the loyalty to Sam, the type of Oiler he's been, his connection to not only the guys that are still on the team, but Jeff Jackson as well, even Kenny Holland. I think you're going to see Sam around the team, and depending on the health, he might end up in Bakersfield briefly. I think there's an agreement there that he would be okay with that. And then if the body responds positively, then sure, I think we could see him.
biggest
can play.
question is if he'd go to Bakersfield or not, or if he'd just hang around the team and be in the dressing room, and maybe play 20 to 40 games
Yeah.
tops, right? Like he's not going to play the whole season, you would
Mike,
think, but
all indicators are he is willing to go down to Bakersfield.
yeah.
Even if you're that paper transaction like Shorzy was.
Yeah. That's right.
Right? How many times did he go up and down without leaving his couch? Like it was.
Yeah.
You know what? There's a glue guy. Really nice guy.
Yeah.
Very happy for him to get that deal in Seattle. And then just with Ernie, call it a favor, call it, relationships from the past. He'd have to be lights out in training camp and really beat out one of those veteran guys to get a full-time contract. So it sounds like it's more for him an opportunity to showcase himself and maybe get a deal somewhere else, the way we saw Versteeg do that in 16.
Right.
And then you know what? If he finds a rhythm and groove and shows well in training camp and preseason, and he's willing to take a two-way deal, maybe they find a way to make that happen. But that's kind of an outlier, it sounds like right now.
Yeah, and McCurdy said it on last week. He was talking about it. I mean, it's a good opportunity for the Oilers to play, the proper amount of vets in preseason, right? And so, whether or not he makes the team or not isn't really a part of the equation. If he does show, if he has lights out, then hey, great, right? If he's not, you didn't lose anything.
No,
maybe you saved a guy from playing a preseason game, right?
And that's just it, right? Like another veteran doesn't have to make a road trip, or you meet a ratio on the road. I like the comparison of Versteeg. I think that's probably something we might see. I don't think it's because Ermi doesn't deserve a spot. I just think it's because, I think he was second on the team in hits. He led the team in block shots for forwards. He's the type of player you probably want. I joked that he was the future considerations for why am I losing for the Kleem deal?
Kleem, yeah,
right, because he got sent off for futures, and then all of a sudden this showed up. So
don't get wrapped up in those future considerations. That's always just, there you go.
Yeah, get a bag of pucks
nice meal when we're in town.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is there I think the big battles, right, are for that who's going to take that PTO spot, right, and then the Broberg and the Desharnais battle.
Yep.
Right. Any other battles we should be watching for that maybe might not be so evident to folks watching from the outside?
And I know there's a lot of hype around this guy, or a lot of intrigue, is Lavoie. This is make or to break it for him. So just let's see what he does. He's going to play a lot. They're going to put him in a lot of great opportunities. They'll work him up and down the lineup in preseason games. And they're going to try to give him, from my understanding, as many chances to show that he might be ready to become an NHL player. Whether or not he is, time will tell. But it doesn't sound like there's like another year of waiting for Raphael Lavoie. It's like, okay, man, you had a great finish last year. You've been in the system for a long time. We know you've had injuries, but there isn't a lot of wiggle room and patience anymore, especially with those young guys like we talked about, Petrov, Burgot, maybe a Savoy. Tulio's name is in the mix now. So this is it. This is a huge camp for Lavoie, and let's see how he performs. And I think some people, just reading texts that come into the station and some of the YouTube chat now that we're live on the YouTube side of things, they're rooting for Lavoie, and it's like this optimism and kind of being like, well, he scored 20 whatever last year and had a great finish to the year. Why can't he be a top 6 guy because of his size and he can skate okay? It's like, the top 6 is pretty much full. I would argue the top 9 is. And if he does crack this lineup by having an outstanding training camp, I think it is, working his way up, bottom 6. And if he plays better and performs better than Holloway, then he might push Holloway out of the way to get that first look. But I think Holloway has precedent over Lavoie 100%, just because they like Holloway. The kid made the team last year, and B, I think Holloway's ceiling is probably higher than Lavoie's.
I think it's hard for some fans, not the guys that listen to our show because they're smart But some folks to understand that some players can't play bottom six in the NHL, right? Like they have to change their game, right, to do that. And it's two different styles of play, and so it just doesn't do them any favors to come in and play bottom six, and Lavoie might be a guy like that. I mean, he could play on the third line, I think, but give him fourth line minutes or play him on the fourth line, I mean, that's a waste of talent for a guy that might be able to break a lineup someplace else, if not in Edmonton at some point. And I think I watched him play again in the rookie camp. I thought he looked good. He's definitely a talented player, and he's got a future in the league. Who knows at what level, but he'll play some games. I could see definitely. I like him. I didn't text into the show to say I love the guy or anything, but maybe I will tomorrow.
I think he's one of those players you kind of want to cheer for, and you want it to work out for, because he's a bit of a unicorn in the way that he plays the game, right, Tommy? Like, he's got that grit. He doesn't mind dropping his gloves. He can still put him in the back of the net. He's got a bit of size. His speed's okay, right? So, sure, he could play a little bit of fourth line minutes, but you already said it. Like, in my opinion, and wholeheartedly, I think Holloway should start the season in the minors. I just don't see an opportunity where he's going to play enough to advance. And you got to raise your hands in the air, and you got to celebrate a few things when you play hockey. And if you're playing the fourth line, or you're playing 8 minutes a night, like he was the second lowest in minutes per game of all rookies last year, right? About a 60 some rookies that made it into the NHL. Like, you're not going to advance if you're doing that. You've got to play on the power play. And you're not going to play on Edmonton's power play. That's not happening unless you're filling Dry's water bottle. That's your contribution. So you might as well start in the bake, where you can, I think, like, play top 6 minutes, really start to get your confidence, and then wait for an injury. So if that's the case, Holloway's your first call up, and then maybe Raff is your second or whatever. But I like Grube, and I think that, he's got a chance to maybe play and get called up as well. So, I've heard you say it. It's a good problem to have. There's only one spot available, and there's probably 5 or 6 guys that could grab it. But I see a vet taking it, I think.
We've seen that before. Like, Brad Malone made the team last year. I think we forget about it.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to people, I'm like, my dark horse to make the team is Brad Malone. Listen, there was cap implications and all of that.
I think Shore made the opening lineup too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I remember talking to Bugsy, and I was like, dude, you're going to make the opening night lineup. He's like, my wife is going to be pissed. We bought all this new furniture. We just bought a house in Bakersfield. And she's like, you're still up in Edmonton? You made the team? And I'm like, what's she complaining about? You're making NHL.
A few extra bucks for a moving van there.
Yeah, it was hilarious. And he stayed, I think he was there for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. But it was just funny. I'm like, Bugsy, you made the team. He's like, I know. My wife is even more mad now because I don't know when I'm coming back.
We've seen some guys, this, maybe change the topic a little bit before.
Well, can I stick there just for a second? Actually, use that for transition, because there's one more thing that's probably up for grabs, and it's not a spot on the team, but it's the starters net. And I'm a little bit interested in your thoughts on that, actually, because I think I heard you say that you'd start Skinner in the first game of the year and for the Oilers opener. And I might challenge you on that a little bit. And it's only because that game's on the road. They got that home and home with Vancouver to start. And I thought it maybe be good to give Campbell the start in Vancouver, and then when you come back to Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, and give Skinner the shot in his hometown in Edmonton for that one. But where do you think that comes out as far as who would be the starter on opening night, and who do you think is going to get more starts this year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Stuart Skinner, and I understand that, like, the Saturday night home opener, this is going to be a big season. Stu is from here, but the opening night of the season, regardless of where it's at home or on the road, usually you're giving that start to your guy and you're saying, this is your net. Now, if Jack Campbell is lights out and Stu Skinner stinks it up in training camp and they have to start Jack opening night, then okay, I get that. And I feel like Jack Campbell should be able to push Stuart Skinner this year. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that keeps both guys on their toes. And if you don't have a goalie taking a month of the season off, basically, to get new goalie gear, figure out his game, rebound from calling his performances pathetic like they had to do last year, I think that's a win. But I do think Stu Skinner, it is his net right now going into training camp. And I think he's going to have to really get outperformed by Jack Campbell to lose that net. I think it's going to be Stu getting most of the starts, but I do think, and from what I hear and what I'm told, is like the ideal situation is that it's like 50-32
Okay.
and closer to 41-41 than we might anticipate, as opposed to going 60-22 or whatever. I think it's going to be closer than we think, and I don't think Stu Skinner is going to just run away as the de facto starter and they're going to him every single night like they did down the stretch because they had to.
Yeah.
I think that this is going to have to be a tandem thing, and they need and want and expect Jack Campbell to play much better. So does Jack Campbell. So do we.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just fine. And but opening night, I still think it is Skinner.
And I think, you're going to find, at the end of the year, whoever's played the most was the best, right? Like that's just how it's going to shake down, right? And I'm more likely to think they'll start Skinner too if the camp goes well. The other thing is I think he's had his rookie season now, right? And those kind of games, while still important as a player, playing at home, he's played at home now, right? He's had his, inaugural Oilers debut and he's played on Hockey Night in Canada. So they're really important still to the players, I think, but maybe less so now. And now you're looking at what's the end goal here, and that's to make it to the playoffs and then move forward this year.
Hey, and one more thing, like with Hockey Night, and I love Hockey Night Canada like anybody does, but like when they're showing like 5 games on a Saturday to start the season, it's not the same as the doubleheader or the one game on a Saturday. It's changed a little bit too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've heard Campbell in interviews, right? And it sounds like he's taken all this as a blessing in disguise. And, if it wouldn't have happened the way it did, he wouldn't have went home and worked on the things that he did. And so I think you're right. Obviously, you can't have 2 bad seasons like that in a row. We saw him change his equipment. I think that'd be a big plus for him to be able to be comfortable there. We've seen him change his goalie coach. We've seen him, make all sorts of adjustments in order to, get used to a new town, for crying out loud, right? New teammates, new dressing room. So I think we'll see nothing but good things there for sure. And as far as Skinner goes, it's a whole new set of pressure this year now, right? Like you said it, he's got his rookie season out of the way, but that comes with a whole new set of expectations now. You're the starter. You've been to the playoffs, and do you think he's ready for that, Tommy?
He has to be. I mean, there's no more tiptoeing around it or being like, oh, I'll give it a shot and see how I do kind of thing. It's like, hey man, we need you. You need to be better than you were last year and go out and do it. To his credit, as he's progressed throughout his career from level to level, gets to one level, struggles, gets better. Gets to the next level, struggles, gets better. And we witnessed, him have a very good regular season, played a little bit too much down the stretch again, because, what could you trust from Jack Campbell? And then in the playoffs, he did not play particularly great. Absolutely, 100%. So now let's see how he bounces back. What's interesting, that him keeping the stick from when he broke it on that fan play when Deneau buried in LA, like that, I've never really seen or heard a story like that where you kept something to remind yourself of a mistake to motivate you. And that's a neat thing about his character.
Yeah.
So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt going into the year and go back to his track record of how he seems to improve after going through those types of lessons and experiences and go, okay, Dash, I think Stu Skinner, by putting that formula together, should be ready to take the next step and improve upon what he wasn't able to do last year. Should is different than actually going out and doing it. Time will tell. But in getting geared up for the season, I think he should be able to elevate himself, especially in the playoffs.
You based it on history. That's he's trended. Yeah.
And you know what? We could be on here again in a few months, boys, and I could be just having egg all over my face and being like, what happened to Stu Skinner? I don't think that's going to happen, but it could, because goalies, it's voodoo, as Low Tide likes to say.
All right, mark that down. We're going to get Tommy back in a few months. We're going to take a break. When we get back, we'll talk about the defense, some of the improvements there. We'll talk a little bit more about goaltending, because defense ultimately leads to some better goaltending. This is Oilers Live from the Heavy Hockey Network. Proud to be a friend of Edmonton Sports Talk. We'll be right back. Join Devin, Bruce, and the rest of the fantasy hockey hacks right here on Edmonton Sports Talk, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Mountain, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey, and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on edmontonsportstalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Make sure you subscribe.
Oilers Live Podcast.
Want hockey podcasts? Tough Call Podcast, 99 Forever Podcast, fantasy hockey hacks, and replays of Oilers Live. Available anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Heavy Hockey Network or go to heavyhockey.com. That's right. We need your help. We need your subscriptions. Make sure you subscribe at www.youtube.ca/heavyhockey.
Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast.
Hey, it's Michael back with Oilers Live Tuesday. We've got as our guest Tom Gazzola from EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Also, when I was making the titles for the show, I'm looking at your Twitter profile, and you've got like 8 million things listed. Who aren't you writing for and correspond? Who aren't you a correspondent?
Man of the people.
Now? Like NHL Network. I mean, I'm sitting in my truck some days listening to Sirius XM, and out comes Tom Gazzola. Talk with the guys on Sirius XM, and I think, at least they got somebody good, because they've had negative folks before.
Yeah. First time I've heard that, so I appreciate it, Michael. No, I love the whole crew, all the guys at Sirius XM, NHL Network Radio, NHL Network, which we don't actually really get here in Canada. It's interesting because I'm one of their Edmonton correspondents. But like some years I'll do, 10 or 15 hits with them. Last year, I think I did one. I did one in August this year. So maybe I'll do more. It's just whenever they need me, basically. And then, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be on TSN radio anytime soon. I actually did Sportsnet radio in Calgary with Patty Steinberg. And I was like, nice. Oh my God, Pat, we get to work together again. We worked the last time together on a Young Stars Classic broadcast, I think in 2015 or 16. But he's like, I don't have to call you by that 3-letter station anymore, which is interesting on the radio side, because there might be some TV stuff. I'll know when they tell me, but I just, you know what, boys, I like talking about hockey. I like talking about sports. I'm a dork, and I admit it, and I'll do it any day, anytime, and it's the best. So we're playing in the sandbox, as Rashog says. That's right. I just hopefully appreciate it as much as possible, and hopefully I can get to do it for as long as possible too.
We're all dorks, and I know you mentioned that Rashog is the highest on the dork hierarchy, and that's a compliment. But
he's a turbo dork,
absolutely, cyborg dork.
Yeah, that's a great description for him.
You mentioned that story of Stuart Skinner keeping his broken stick, and it reminded me of something. I look over at my Oilers Live, and for those of you who can't see on the video here because you're listening, he's rocking this Rod Farva mustache from Super Troopers for the last few weeks. Like he's
Mario.
like getting recruited for the RCMP here. I'm not sure what's going on, but it made me ask you the question, did you keep that mustache because that's you just, keeping one piece of your mistake to remind you of the rest of the facial hair you shouldn't have kept, or like, what's going on with that thing, buddy?
It's to dust away the bad chirps coming my way.
Oof. Deflected.
They're here. You know what? I love the mustache. It's staying for a little while. And we had Tommy thinking of Super Mario, and who knows why, but he's talking about Rainbow Road, and all I can think of is maybe I should have worn my Mario hat. It's subliminal. It gets more comments on the chat than I ever thought it would, but who knows? Until I'm told to shave it, I guess I'll keep it for a little while. It seems to get a lot of commentary. Never a bad thing, right?
Nope.
I was going to ask. So there's a couple of things. You brought up Steinberg. I lived in Calgary for a while. They almost talk about the Oilers more than they talk about the Flames on 960. It's
Right?
ridiculous.
Who wouldn't?
But here's the other part of that is, okay, you're watching the rookie camp, the young stars there at the rookie camp. I get a kick every year when it's the Oilers and the Flames, whether it's Jack and whoever. There's always a little bit of grilling between the two. And whoever's on the Calgary side and whoever's on the Edmonton side, like there's a little bit of and you can hear it kind of as an undertone, like a little rivalry. And they call it out sometimes. They say, I'm being a homer here. And then what Jack said that one point, he goes, yeah, you are, right? Like, I mean, there's a few barbs there, and I love it. And so did you call a game? I might have missed it, but did you call one of the games?
Yeah, I did. For that one where Pat and I we were in the booth together, I've actually done color commentary a bunch. Like when I lived in Oklahoma City during that lockout in 2012,
that's right.
When we'd go on the road, I worked with Jimmy Byers. He was a great classic play-by-play guy, called AAA baseball. He remembered going to cover Trappers games when they played against the Oklahoma City. I think they were the Redbirds back in the day, and then they've changed their names like 19 times since. But I did some color there. I actually worked a game with Bob McDavid's rookie tournament game, and he had like 5 goals. So I've done color commentary. I'm deathly afraid of play-by-play. Like,
Aren't we all?
I can't put it together, or I'm always second guessing myself. Like those guys, the skill that they have to put it together the way they do is amazing. And then the chirps, the subtle ones, the not so subtle ones, the Edmonton, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Calgary, Vancouver, whatever. Like it's the best because Jack's from Pennsylvania, but Edmonton is home now.
Yeah, Sherwood Park.
And when you rip a Calgary guy who's from Calgary, it cuts a little deeper, especially if it's coming from a guy that's not from Edmonton.
An adopted son.
Exactly.
Is still that loyal.
Yeah. And he's been everywhere. And, his ties are to like Pittsburgh and New York and all of those big cities. So it has that extra little bit of sting on it. But those guys, in the end, those guys are actually our friends, and some of it's for show. But when you get one that really rattles the cage, it's kind of funny. And especially during those broadcasts and on those games, they're not the sexiest games or broadcasts. So you can have a little bit of fun. There's a little bit of wiggle room there, and to have that little bit of back and forth running throughout. I'm glad you guys picked up on it, and it's deliberate. And sometimes it's just the subconscious coming to the forefront, and you let something slip. And at the end of the day, Edmonton's a great city. Calgary's a great city. Vancouver's a great city. We all are fortunate to live in the cities that we do. But that rivalry adds a little bit of fuel to the flame, and bring it on, man. Like I love it. And at the end of the day, everybody goes and has a beer together, and they're friends.
Yeah.
Speaking of being able to have some wiggle room in a not so sexy broadcast, I've recently been doing color commentary for Love Pro Wrestling.
Nice.
And I completely get what you mean by I'm absolutely dumbfounded and baffled with respect for the play-by-play guy whose brain seems to be working at the same speed as his mouth, because
Yep.
I don't know. I've got more verbal typos per 60 than most, I think. And it generally doesn't come out the way I want it to, but it's a lot easier. And we can kind of sit back, think about your comment while they're doing the play-by-play and just put in a little barb here and there.
Yep.
What was perhaps in doing all that color commentary or broadcast throughout your history, what's the craziest thing you ever saw? Like, what was your any slap shot moments where the bench is cleared, or anything where you were just speechless and didn't know what the hell to say?
Well, yeah, well, especially like the first couple times you do it, I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't know what to say. And, you'd get notes. I'd talk to Stoff, or I'd talk to Louis DeBrusque, and you get little pointers here and there, and they kind of help you out. But I do remember like slapshot moment, was in San Antonio when the Barons were playing down there, and they're playing against a Rampage. And the arena in San Antonio is where the Spurs play. So it doesn't really fit an NHL rink. It's kind of like what Barclays Center was when the Islanders were there.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I had ever seen a rink set up like that. And I'm like, this is crap. Like, they're allowed to play like this? This is so bizarre. And Jimmy Byers was just like, Tom, this is the minor leagues. Nobody gives two craps. As long as they get people in the door and they get paid for the tickets and they buy beer and hot dogs, that's all that matters. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like, this is not the NHL. That's for damn sure.
What's Byers say about Arizona?
Oh God. Yeah. How much time do we have tonight, you guys? Like, oh my God. And then my favorite moment that I was like, maybe I can do this, was that rookie game where McDavid scored the 5 goals. And I said something, and I'm like, and he goes juice box on so-and-so, and they used it on TSN.
Nice.
And I was like, boom, I'm on TSN. And 3-4 years later, you're actually on TSN, which was funny. But
3-4 years later, you're like, get me off of TSN.
Yeah, well, I'm like, no, I want Rashog's paycheck. What is this?
Well, the bureau chief, that's another story.
That's right.
I mean, filling in for Dusty for 12 hours a day and then still doing the post-game show at midnight is a whole nother story.
I love it, though. I really do.
Wow, you're so good, man.
Yeah.
I've heard you say it, right? That post-game show is like a whole different animal. It's like a rush, right? You get that adrenaline from the game, and you get to really use your empathic abilities to feel the listener. And I love the way you handle them too, because you can be pretty straightforward with some of them, and I'm yelling at my radio a lot more than you are at them, that's for sure.
Well, there's days I want to yell at them, but yeah. Sorry, Michael.
Right, so you're gonna have a little bit more leeway to do post game this year.
Yeah,
maybe have some fun with it and do a couple of things you want.
There's video now too.
Yeah. Video now too. Yeah. I'll tell you what, we were at Canadian Ice House last year for the second half of the season, and there were some really rowdy nights where I was just like, oh my God, if I could just describe to people the things that I was seeing, people getting thrown out, fight. There was the one fight that we had to talk about was game 1 of the LA series.
Oh, wow.
Where everyone was so pent up with emotion and they lose that game. And I'm watching like Cassian is sitting right across from me in our little booth, and Maddie brought his wife. So Amanda was sitting right beside
the right guy.
Yeah. Well, Matt's like trying to talk, and I'm looking at him, and he's starting to go like this as he's talking. He goes like this to me, and he points behind me, and all I hear is these tables go flying, and I turn around. There's 8-man brawl happening. And then as that's happening, I'm seeing Amanda like get closer to Matt because she's worried. And then I see this other guy run behind Matt and Amanda and just sucker punch another guy, and they start going. And
no way.
And I'm like, okay, we're going to have to take a timeout, go to break. Oiler fans are beating up Oiler fans. I'm like, listen, it's game 1, you guys relax. And of course, me telling people on the radio who are nowhere near, the ice house is ridiculous. But the best part was things settled down and the cops came in quickly, and they grabbed all those guys by the scruff of the neck, like kids that would get into fights in junior high and high school, and they walked them out. It was such a perfect moment. I wish I could take a video of it.
That's your
Poetic
slap shot
justice.
moment there.
That was definitely it.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Exactly, Michael. I'm like, that's the story we needed to hear when he was in a hockey arena.
The best was their heads were hanging in shame as the cops were walking them out too.
Unbelievable. Can you imagine if you had video for that post game, man? You guys would need to ask for subscribers. You'd be viral long ago.
Well, that was a
ISO staff
typical.
showed me the video, and they apparently synced it up to my show. And they were like, they were watching in the back, and they're like, "This is amazing."
That's
That's a
awesome.
typical Tuesday night at Izzy's back in the day, though.
There were some rough ones there.
They're
I
definitely.
thought you said you didn't do any of that stuff, Michael.
Well, back in the day, I sure did. You bet I did.
Mr. Innocent.
Yeah. Hey, we've got we're now, now that we're on this live thing, I mean, it's like we get cut off right at the half hour, and that's it. I mean, I could be talking, and then all of a sudden, boom, nobody can hear me anymore. I guess we can keep going on YouTube all night if we wanted, but people will stop listening at some point if they haven't already. So we got about 15 minutes left. I was going to ask you earlier before Dash cut me off.
That never happens.
It's the first time, right?
Ever.
Yeah. And, we saw, you see Shore go out the door. You see Cassian out the door. I was thinking of, I don't know why this popped in my, remember Ryan Jones playing music at the end of the game. Like, that was so much fun to watch. Like, he was like, you talk about being a glue guy, Yamamoto was well liked as far as we knew. I mean, you see these guys around. Who's that guy? Who's replacing all these guys that seem to be these glue guys that are going out the door? And
Yep.
is that
Great question.
going to have any effect on the team this year?
And I'll throw another name in there, and they called him Vibe Daddy, was Tyson Berry.
Yeah.
He was everybody's best friend. They really liked him, and he was great to us as media members. He would come out and talk, and he wouldn't BS you. He was great. But who would be the glue guy in that room? I would say
Doc, maybe.
Yeah, well, he's one of the spearheads. He's a leader, like he's a vocal leader. Who's the guy that would have everyone over and be that glue guy? They're all really easygoing. I don't know what the ego situation is like. Like, you're a couple of the best players in the world, you're going to have ego, but there seems to be a true understanding of everybody's in it together. And I don't know if there's like necessarily a clown on the team or a guy that has the wisecrack at the right moment, but everybody seems to get along and they're all on the same path. But you have like sincerely nice guys on the team now. You don't have any of those guys that are sharp and who are off on their own, or they're in bad moods and just these dark clouds hanging over them whenever they're walking around. Like, for the most part, all of this group is on the same page. And from what I hear, like, the big boys like to make sure that everyone parties and is together and has a good time. One of the guys, I'll bring up a guy who has an interesting and kind of fun personality. It's Ryan McLeod, but he's a younger guy.
Yeah.
But he's always laughing. You look at him and he's got that toothless grin.
Yeah.
You say something to him and he starts laughing. You're like, oh, okay. Like, you get it. You're really easygoing. Darnell Nurse is sneaky funny too. Leon, not everyone gets Leon, but if you do and he gets you, you're good. Like, we're
big
fine.
fans of his sense of humor on the show. What about a guy like Evander Kane? I think back to him, bumping into guys in warm-ups and practice and kind of getting them going. And I've heard he's, taught a few guys how to throw a little bit and stuff like that.
I'll tell you, when I see stuff like that, like, I'm always a little bit hesitant to be like, oh, that guy is a team player, because those guys know the cameras are rolling. Those guys know it's an easy way to make good with fans or get in and, be appealing to the fans. It's also a smart play too, but by all accounts, to Evander Kane's credit, he's backed it up, how he's acted in the room, how he's been in the community to this point. And there's, I was one of those people that was like, oh, this could be a massive disaster.
We
and
both were. Yeah.
Everything I had heard before was bad. but to his credit, he's been pretty good. So yeah, and watching him, and I've said this too on the Oil Stream and on EST, is like, I think he gets it now. Like, he's had how many opportunities, he's filed for bankruptcy, all the legal stuff he's had to deal with, and now he's got a couple of kids, and I think he's starting to think about, after playing hockey, what happens and how do you maintain a steady income, and what does Evander Kane, the businessman, look like? And I think we're starting to see the beginnings of that. And I think he comprehends, because he is a smart guy, and he's very aware that he needs to start planting those seeds right now. And I think part of that maturation process is recognizing that, and all the things he should have known better in years past, he's probably doing it the right way now.
Fair to say glue guy by committee? Like, everybody's kind of got a role, right? McLeod can crack a joke, or right? Like, I think I see Derek Ryan's everybody's favorite dad, right? Like, kind of playing that role. So
yeah. And when I heard that, I'm like, Derek Ryan? Really?
Yeah, right.
Either like he's like the grumpy guy that's my age walking around the room, and he's still on the team, and they love him. So that's a testament to what he's like away from the media. But usually we get a little taste of what the guys really are like, but apparently he's at the tippy top of their one of their favorite guys.
One of the first guys they brought back.
Now, you've been in the industry for a couple of years now, right? You're still a young guy as far as
compared to some of our peers, yeah.
But now I'm kind of curious, because you just brought it up, but these guys are young guys, like 24, 23, 24, 25. Are you starting to notice now that you're a little bit older, like how young they truly are? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying you're old. You're not. You're younger than I am, but. Was there a point when you realized, when you were younger following a team, you're probably like, yeah, these guys are, these are my buddies. These are the same guys I go drinking with.
Yep.
Now, they probably look at, you or anybody as being like an older guy now, right? And you're not, but
no,
that's probably the age that they're at.
Tony graduated to hanging out with Gretzky's, though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a whole different story. I mean, Ty's become one of my good friends. Yeah, he's a great guy. So that's a different story. But yes, Michael, when guys my age started retiring is when I was like, oh my God, I'm old. Like, the first shot for me was Mark Fistrick, because Mark and I grew up playing hockey together. And I know he got bought out and didn't work out in Anaheim, but like, I was like, you're done. Sean Bell, when he retired out of Europe, I remember playing against Sean Bell. When Dion Phaneuf played against him in Bantam, like, he would just mop the floor with us. And I was like, these dudes are done playing. And I'm like, as a hockey player or athlete, like, I'm in that age range where you're old. And like, I don't look as old as I am. I'm almost 40. And some guys don't know that, but the ones who do, like Nugent Hopkins, him and I, like, he's 30, he's got a kid. I remember when he was just a baby himself.
Baby Nuge.
I was, and I was like just a few years older than him. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So
Baby Nuge has a baby Nuge.
Yeah. Baby Nuge has a baby. So that has sunk in. And like, listen, I'm not trying to be their best friends. I'm not part of OEG anymore. There's a separation there, but as one of the younger media guys still in Edmonton, especially with this Oilers media, you can relate to them a little bit more. Like, if they start telling me about TikTok and how they picked up some girl from seeing their TikTok, I'll be like, I hate TikTok. Sorry, boys, I'm out of this conversation. Like, now if you want to talk about video games and you want to talk about, documentaries and dorky crap like that, I'm all in. Like
Star Wars, F1.
Like Mark Letestu and I would talk video games all the time, like stuff like that. and so now there is that, these are kids, they're young guys. Like, I'm almost at the point where the kids that are getting drafted, I'm old enough to be their dad, which is ridiculous. But but I think too, on a serious note, it is a good thing, because like, now you recognize it's time to, the mistakes you made before, hopefully you're not making them anymore. How you approach things should be a little bit more refined and different than how you did when you were
Yeah.
26 years old in the room and dealing with older media. So now, I think this is my 15th or 16th season covering the team. I got started really early, like right out of college. I think I was still in college. So yeah, there's an aging process there, but embrace it, try to adapt. Today, one of our new guys at Edmonton Sports Talk that we hired, we call him YouTube Trev, was telling me like this TikTok stuff. And he's like, Tom, you're at the rink. You can do this. You can do that. I'm like, yeah, that's easy. I know how to do that. He goes, well, great. Send it to me and we're going to put it up on TikTok. And honestly, I was just like, you're going to put it on TikTok on our Edmonton Sports Talk? Fantastic. Because I don't know what I'm doing. I'll just send you the video. You do whatever you want with it. He's like, I got this. I have all these ideas. And I'm like, wow, I'm old.
Beautiful.
I am so old, but thank God someone else is doing it. And we're at that point. So yes, that has sunk in, boys. And very recently I've thought about it.
I'm in that generation a decade ahead of you where it was, for me, the guys that I grew up watching, like Foligno and Sutter and Domi, and now their kids are all almost out of the NHL, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not far from seeing Max Domi's kid in the NHL in 20 years or whatever, right? Like, it's that was for me when I started seeing the generation, Nick Foligno and Marcus Foligno and these guys start running out of track. I was like, oh boy.
Well, Strudwick and I went to high school together.
Yeah, that's right.
Idea of my age.
Wow.
So,
Struds. I love that guy.
What a beauty. Speaking of
he was
glue
a
guys.
character in high school too. All good. We got about 5 minutes left, and we didn't talk about the defense. But we can take a couple minutes to talk about the defense. We've got Ekholm, knock on wood, for a full season this year. We got a little bit of a competition with that bottom pair in Broberg and Desharnais. Kulak, you'd expect, will play, hopefully, a full-time role this season. How do you feel about it? Any concerns going in? Is the CC thing still a concern at all? His health and anything that you've heard?
As far as I know, he's good to go. I guess we'll find out for sure tomorrow, but it sounds like everything's all systems go. And listen, he would admit last year wasn't his best year and his first year was way better, but I think this is a pretty solid decor. And it's crazy how one move heading towards the deadline last year kind of changed the way we think of this blue line, because there were nights last year where Broberg and Bouchard together were a disaster.
Yeah.
And those were the same nights where a Darnell Nurse would make a bad mistake, bad pinch. CC wasn't there to cover for him. It would blow up in their face. Like that happened. But we were talking about guys slotting in where they should earlier. With Ekholm, guys are slotting in where they should. I think Ekholm is their number one defenseman. Darnell Nurse is a good number two. And this is taking the money aspect out of it, because people always point to the contract and it's like, okay, take the contract out of it. Darnell Nurse is going to be helped as much as Evan Bouchard was by the addition of Matthias Ekholm. And I always joke about this, guys, but when you look down the bench or you're on the ice and you see a Viking that's a giant mountain of a man, and like there's some solace in knowing that guy's on your team, that guy's in your locker room, that guy's on your bench, and on top of that, he's a really good human being. That goes a long way. So I think in terms of the actual play, it'll help them. Let's see how Bouchard, if he takes another step, as he should, and he's going to have every opportunity to. And then let's watch Kulak. There's been a few people that I've seen, again, going back to our text line and everything, that are like, well, what about moving out Kulak? It's like, no, guys, leave it how it is.
Bring it in the playoffs again.
You got to stop reading that text line.
Yeah. But you get those people that are thinking this, right? And that's this fan base that is trying to process different opportunities. They want money freed up to go and get a guy, so they think Kulak might be the guy. If Broberg can step in, it's like, no. This is a good team.
Yeah.
Let the defense be the defense. Let Desharnais and Broberg fight it out, have that competition, see how that plays out. If it blows up in their face, then we're wrong, but it shouldn't. Right now, what is coming into camp is pretty darn good. So
it drives me nuts that the league, or like outside of Edmonton, does not see Darnell Nurse as a top 20 D man in the league. Like, for me, here's a guy, you talk about those nights with Bouchard and Broberg and Cece, and the reason Darnell's making that pinch is because he's trying to do everything
Yep.
because he had to.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now that he's got Ekholm for a full year, like, to me, this guy is a top 20, if not a top 15 D-man in the
Hey,
league.
7th in Norris
And
voting.
yeah, like this is I mean, you'll know, and anybody that listens, and probably the people that don't are Nurse haters, but we're big Nurse fans on.
Find yourself
on
someone in your life that loves you as much as Oilers fans love griping about salary,
Yeah.
and you'll be a happy
They
man.
love it.
That's my final words for
Yeah.
the night.
All right, guys. Unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. We got cut off already on edmontonsportstalk.com, so people are listening now to some reiteration of either you, Tommy, or
Sorry.
Dusty in the morning, and unfortunately, they didn't hear me say goodnight. Who knows how they'll sleep tonight, but they'll try.
Probably pretty well,
They'll do it probably better,
especially if they're listening to this.
yeah. So anyway, we're thankful to have you, Tom, and thankful to be part of this inaugural season of EdmontonSportsTalk.com, and one of the only live shows, I think, at night.
Yep.
Yeah, and we'll have the guys from Fantasy Hockey Hacks on tomorrow night. We're going to, because we're already off EdmontonSportsTalk.com, I think we'll sort of reenact what we normally have as a tradition on Oilers Live, which is our guest gets the last word. So I'll just say a couple of things. Thank you, everybody that's tuned in and continues to tune in on YouTube today at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. We even had a couple of Twitch listeners. And then on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Oilers podcast. You can find us. We'll be back next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Mountain. And tomorrow night, make sure you tune in. Fantasy Hockey Hacks has a great lineup of guests. Not as great as ours was tonight, but almost as good. And so make sure you tune in tomorrow night. You can listen to them live on EdmontonSportsTalk.com as well. Dash, any last words before we give Tom? So how it works is we give our guests the last word of the night. You can say whatever the hell you want. I just need you to say good night so that I know when to, close the drapes and turn off the lights and all those things. If you don't say that, we just sit here looking in an awkward pause while everybody watches us. So that's the only rule. Dash, you go ahead and then pass it over to Tommy to say good night.
Nothing else to say. Just good seeing you again, Tommy. It's been a while since I shadowed you around the ice on that Dirty Birds tournament. And Chris Branco said I couldn't let you out of my sights. I know there was probably a few dirty hooks in there. So I'll finally apologize for that face to face. Just, honored to have you on. Thanks for doing this with us. And, your last words here, it's really no different than what Dusty tells you at the end of every little string. Take us out of here. Go ahead, Tom.
Beautiful. I like how you're wearing the Dirty Birds hoodie there, Dash. So great representation. That was a great tournament. Raised a lot of money for a great cause with the Neurosurgery Kids Fund. And don't worry, we're not the first guy to try to shadow me. Not going to be the last, I think, in my beer league days. But great to see you again. And Michael, pleasure, and great to have you guys as part of the EST, Friends of EST, because the thing with Edmonton Sports Talk, this is local sports, and we want to make sure that every sport, every team in this community is served, and now we can actually do that because we're the ones calling the shots. And to have you guys on is an honor and a privilege, and to have me today, thank you so much for doing that. And with that being said, like, share, subscribe, smash the thumbs up. Like I say, we're playing that algorithm game. YouTube's a big one. And without further ado, gentlemen, good night.